You'll never guess what we found on this scotia, one of the South African indigenous trees, is a whole branch full of mystacidiums. And notice they're all just growing out here on the tree as if they were mounted. And isn't that a good segue to introduce you to Lance? We had the pleasure of listening to his talk on mounting orchids at the Highway Orchid Society show, and this is what he has to say.
All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Highway Orchid Society show. My name is Lance Rasmussen. I've been a member of the Highway Orchid Society for a few years, and personally I was a horticulturist and manager in the parks department for over 40 years. Just talking on orchids and mounting. We all know that the majority of the orchids that you buy are in a pot. Prime example, there are the little dendrobiums in the pot. This is in a pot. Now, just for personal choice, which do you think looks better? Something growing in a pot like that, which is nothing wrong with it, or something growing like that?
Any day.
You see the actual mounting. This is basically called the mounting, yeah. The only problem with mounting is you do need a bigger space than normally if you're growing stuff in pots. But it looks so much aesthetically pleasing and so much better. And it grows. We know 80% of the orchid species found in the world are epiphytes. That means 80% of all the orchids that you know of or you've seen grow on trees. They are epiphytic. They don't use the tree to get any moisture. They're not parasitic at all. They just use the tree as a place to attach their roots to and get up to the sunlight. The other 20% that vary between lithopic and terrestrial. Good example of terrestrial would be your cymbidium. That grows in more sort of potting mix. But let's get straight into mounting. What wood to use? Wood like this, no go. If we look at it here, this is a melaleuca. You see how the bark peels off? It's very, very, very loose. So you don't want that to happen, because if you do put it on and the orchid root gets on there, then it just flakes and it's just going to fall away. So what you need is a hardwood, something that's going to last you at least between 4 to 5, if not longer, years. I found that this is sicklewood, Dicrostracacinia for the botanical people. It's the sicklewood that you get, grows, it's not an alien, it's an indigenous plant, but it does take over invasive in the actual farm areas. This is very, very good, and very, very good and easy to get at some of the braai shops. When you go to Builders or some of your braai places, whatever it is, look for a bag of sicklewood, and that's ideal wood in which to mount your orchids. If you haven't got that, the best other place is in bottle brush. Bottle brush is very, very good. The normal weeping bottle brush. Then this is the real McCoy. This is hardwood that'll last you out long all of our lives. This is, I think it's Combretum inerbi, the ironwood, but very, very hard to get hold of. Unless you go up to Mkuzi way or that type of way and you know someone, you can get it. But this is the number one, numero uno, if you want to mount stuff on, yeah. Because it's not flat and smooth. It's very, very hard, and plus it's got nice little corrugations where the roots like to get in and they can establish themselves. And next to that is cork. This is, you get down cork, very, very good. A lot of people like cork. I like it because the inside does rot, but the outside doesn't. The actual bark cork itself. Unfortunately, you don't get this much. There are a few cork trees around in the area. But what I do is when I go down to Cape Town where my wife runs, so she does 2 oceans, I go to Constantia, and they've got these cork trees that grow in the open spaces. And I go then pick up the old branches and break them up, put them in a bag, and that's my 10 kg or 20 kg luggage, which I'm allowed to bring back. So cork, yeah, very, 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 very good. Let's make it interactive. Please stop me if there's any questions you want to ask. Or perfect. The only problem with normal driftwood, it may, if it's been in the sea, it may require a bit of soaking. So then you wouldn't have to then soak it in fresh water just to get some of the salts out. Yeah. But that's perfect. The other nice way of doing it is this. This is basically there. It's It's just plastic with the coir squeezed inside, and that's a plant that's been planted on there. And that would be mounted. And this has been planted for 2 or 3 months, and it's actually going. The orientation of your plant that you're going to plant. What I mean by orientation is some plants like to grow horizontal. Some plants like to grow vertical. So that you must just know your plant that you're going to grow and what it actually does, which way it's going to grow. Horizontal. Off the record, they would both theoretically grow level both ways, but the one they just seem to like it if you can plant them the way that they would normally be found. Yeah. The other mounting quickly is this one here, which is it's ceramic. It's unglazed, so what's nice about it'll absorb water, be nice and cool. This will be nice for your cool growing orchids, and that's what it looks like too. So it does age in weather, nice and green. It doesn't stay. So if you do get that green algae on there, don't worry about spraying it with jick and everything, because it'll end up killing your plant. You leave it. It's just a natural process. Before you start mounting, make sure that you've got the right tools. Pliers just to clip any wire, whatever you want to do. Clip the wire to make a place for the orchid to hang on, the bark on. Depending on what you're using as a mounting, how you're going to mount the orchids, what you're going to tie them with. There's a little side cutter if you're going to use, say, the old Scooby-Doo wire, which we all used to play and make little things with them, and then a sharp pair of scissors. All right, first mistake that I learned with mounting, that's a dendrobium, is if it's possible, plant and mount when you see a new growth with at least roots about 2 to 3 centimeters. Nice green roots. So ideally, it's the best time to plant would be coming into September, October. As you can see with this dendrobium, same thing, this is mounted. But see now, this one's starting to grow. You can see the new growth coming out there. Once it gets nice little roots on, it'll be ideal then to establish. And I found by doing it too early, or when it hasn't got any nice green roots on or nice and healthy, it's going to take a long time. It's going to set the plant back. So it's a bad time to mount if there's no nice new fresh roots coming on. The next thing is what materials that you'll need to keep that plant moist. Obviously, the ideal thing about growing plants mounted is that they can take, I wouldn't say a lot more water, but you can water them more often than a orchid in a pot. This orchid in a pot, theoretically, if you water it, it's going to retain a lot of moisture. So sometimes if you're a bit heavy-handed like me and you haven't really got a big greenhouse, you only got a few orchids which you like, it's best to mount them. And then what you can do then is where you find the place outside, wherever they're growing, and you can water them. You can sometimes water them up to 2 or 3 times a day because the retention of the bark it's not that good, but it does, as I said before, allow them to attach onto the bark. So the advantage with mounting is that you can water more often, and that in some type of orchids that's better. Little equitant oncidiums, I don't know if you know, beautiful little equitant oncidiums with the colourful flowers. That likes to be mounted. Small mount, and you can water it 2 or 3 times a day. Just make sure that by night time that it actually dries out. Yeah, especially in the middle of summer. Yeah. Because see, this is not like a pot or anything. So you come back in an hour's time and it's dry. But just make sure that you know what type of orchid that you are watering. Don't go and water something that doesn't like water 3 times a day. But yeah,
So Lawrence, if they're mounted, should you water them at least once a day?
depending on Mark, I always say watering. It's like saying something in a pot. No one likes cold feet. So if you're going to water and it's cold, it's going to be cold. It'll feel like you with cold feet. No one likes cold feet. So the actual best is, Mark, best time is to water sort of mid-morning, lunchtime, afternoon, so when they dry out by night time. This is another little way of doing it. This is big now for bulbophyllums. The only problem with this is you've got the blue bark inside there, which does decompose. But that's a nice way now of growing bulbophyllums. A lot of people are growing them this way, or by putting them in on mounts like that. Can I pass anything around? Anyone just have a look at anything? Or yeah, and that you just make yourself. That's just a little homemade thing. All right, now we come to mounting. First thing, right, we've got a nice plant now. It's unfortunate at the time this would be the best. This would be the best plant. The other ones I got here aren't ready. I was going to show you. This would be the ideal time to mount now. New growth coming out, 2 or 3 roots. You can see it's nice and green roots. You know that's okay now. That's going to grow. So now we've got that all ready. We've got our plants ready. They're all mounted. That's what you can do. You do get them mounted, obviously. And then what materials you can use, just as a little bit of extra to retain a little bit of moisture around it, is coir fabric, which you get and you put that around it. The ideal type of stuff to put around here is stuff called sphagnum moss, but I find it's very, very difficult to get a good quality one, and it's difficult to tie on because you tie it on and it like breaks off all the time, and it dries out. Once it dries out, it's very, very difficult to re-establish. And most important, when you're tying on an orchid to a mount, don't tie your coir or your sphagnum onto the bark and then tie the orchid onto that. Do it the other way around. Put your orchid on first and then cover your coir or your sphagnum moss, your mount, with your coir moss.
You put the coir and Hessian on that.
Hessian would work well too.
Both of them as well.
No, Hessian I would find. Hessian would work well if you've got a bigger plant. And that sort of type thing. Now it's going to take quite a long time for those roots to really come down and get established. So they could dry out. That's why what you do is then, as you get a piece of Hessian, or you get some shade cloth. I should cut this to a bigger piece. And what you can do is sort of just mount in a single form. You could just sort of mount that. Don't want to break those roots. You could just mount that around, tie that on, that sort of type and effect. You see now that would be the type of effect. You haven't damaged the roots, and then you could put a little bit of bark in there, and once it gets going, it'll take it down, and then you can cut the mount off. But that's a very, very way in which to keep moisture retention, then stop it really from drying out. And you can use Hessian, you can use this shade cloth, or you can use the palm fronds, the stuff that you get off the palm trees. But I would do that. I would put that around there with a bit of Hessian and put a little bit of stuff and then give it a good chance to actually root.
And when you mount an orchid, when you put Hessian, must it be quite tight or
So not too tight that it's going to do any damage. That's exactly, if you're gonna mount now too, that's what you're gonna, if we talk about the mounting, the different things that you can use to mount, to tie your orchid onto whatever you're gonna use, you actually driftwood. There's a lot of lines of thought. There's a Scooby-Doo wire. The only problem with that is it works very, very well, but you've got to watch out. It doesn't actually die down. So if breakdown, so if your plant is growing, it tends to strangle it. So you've got to be on your toes all the time to do it. The best way is a stocking. Do you still get these things? Pantyhose.
yes.
You just get an old pantyhose. And you just open it up and tie it to any pieces you want. Now that you could theoretically replace. You see, I've got the Scooby-Doo wire. I could replace this with the stocking. Stocking is very, very nice. After a while, it does decompose and break down. So then it's there. It's okay.
Then the root is
It's really growing. Yeah, with the wire and the the wire, the Scooby-Doo wire and fishing line. People used to use fishing line. No, it doesn't. It actually does more damage than it actually. If you forget it, it's there. It'll end up breaking into the new growth and destroying it. So that's numero number one, is an old pantyhose. And then what I found also too about mounting is a dendrobium. That lady with the dendrobium there, she got it in a pot. If you look at this was the original piece. This was the original piece of wood. Can you see it? that I had it mounted on. Now, normally when you've got to replant or repot, especially repotting, you end up having to take the plant out the pot, taking away some of the mixture, cleaning it out. There's a good chance too that you damage roots, new roots come out, the new growth. So it's a bit of a mission. It does set the plant back a little bit if it hasn't got the ideal conditions and the new growth system. Whereas all I did was, on the old piece that was mounted on, I just attached this to this as a piece of driftwood. And you can see how happy it is. And that'll be there forever and ever. It'll just grow on. See, it's coming out there now. If this was in a pot or something, this would now start sort of wanting to come out the bottom of the pot. Now, oh, it's going to die. It's going to give you a problem. But here, because it's mounted, it's got the freedom to do what it likes. Yeah, yeah. Yes. It's all little spikes here. This is a nobile type. Flowers off the old growth from last year. Yeah. By now, they should be in full flower. I think that's the nobile type. Yeah. It gets a little swelling of the bud from sort of April onwards. One of the things that where is it? I was gonna stress her out. The best is this is also too ready for mounting. It's a Cattleya skinneri. The only problem is the roots. It hasn't really got any new roots coming out, so I'm gonna wait a bit. This fell out the pot, and so what I'll do is I'll wait for nice green roots and new growth, and then I will actually attach it.
You just leave it like that?
Yeah. Just keep it in a nice cool place. Wait for the new growth. Oh, I would just put it in a plastic pot just to keep the humidity. And the moment the new growth comes out, the new roots, you know it's ready for mounting.
Would you plant that one sideways?
This naturally, Cattleya skinneri, it actually is epiphytic. It would actually grow both ways, but it would prefer more of a sort of horizontal, yeah. But I've got one and it's growing upwards, and it's because what'll happen, the Cattleyas and the Lalias, they don't really get a sort of Lalia, everyone knows the Lalias, you get them in the gardens, and even the Oncidiums too. They don't get a sort of single growth that keeps on growing straight all the time. You can see how this one is now deviating. So that's what's nice. If it's mounted now, you put this on a mount, it'll keep on going. Where if you put it in the pot, maybe you planted it a bit too close to the back of the pot, and this one now going to go to the edge of the pot, and now, you've just got to change it again. So you normally know the sort of spacing between the pseudo bulbs. It's ideal. That can see you how really whether the plant would be fine for mounting or for potting. And please, any orchids that you are going to work with, if you are going to do them, touch them, move them, the roots, etc., the pseudobulbs, do it as late in the afternoon as possible, because that's when the orchid is nice and turgid, it's nice and fleshy, and it's got a lot of water. In the morning, I've lost a lot. I've come out in the morning and I want to mount an orchid. Now it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and I take the new growth, it just snaps off in my hand, because it's, how would I say it, it's don't know what the word would be, but I mean, the best is, to do any work you want to do with your orchids, playing around with the roots, mounting, potting, is do it late in the afternoon when these roots and that's a bit more flexible. And last but not least is they actually say that the bark that you're using should have a bit of a sort of corrugation to it, or a bit of a furrows that would actually grow on. And yet, this one here, that's piece of driftwood. That's just a plain, very, very hardwood. That hasn't got any sort of bark that would grow on. And what's nice about this to the bark, this will never rot. This will eventually rot, but the bark will go first, and then there's still a bit of hardwood there, so that should still be okay. And then contradictory to the whole story is, if you're going to look at, people say you only mount on something that's got nice rough bark and it's not going to break down. Look at this. This is the orchid I found there. It's an Oncidium. And that to me is growing on a jacaranda stump. And how many times have you gone past someone's cutting down a nice jacaranda or hardwood tree? Just cut into small slices for you and just dry it out a bit and then plant your Oncidium on there. It's an intergeneric Oncidium hybrid. But look how nice that looks. Look at how nice. Another point, yes and no, pros and cons, is I don't like putting this Spanish moss around the roots. Some people say it holds the water in retention, but I find it seems to do the opposite, because that actually takes all that absorbs all of the actual water itself. So I'd rather just leave the actual coir as itself with the coir And no, don't hang Spanish moss. And you can. It looks very, very nice, but I just don't. I don't like doing that. Yeah, it is. A lot of people do it. A lot of people don't. That's just a personal. The last thing is a lot of us get indigenous orchids, indigenous epiphytic orchids, Cytorchis, Mystidiums. You've all seen the Mystidium capensi, the white one that flowers December, naturally in the trees. Yeah, epiphytic. If you do get them. However, you do require permits, etc., to collect any of our indigenous plants, orchids included. It's like a cycad sort of thing, like on a CITES. What I do find is these will never grow in a pot. Now, if you take that and try and put that in a pot, it's just impossible. It doesn't do anything. It's not going to grow anything. So that's why it's mounted. See how that's mounted on an old piece of bottle brush wood. See how nice and strong the bottle brush wood is. Once again, I know I had to. I repotted at the wrong time, but I had to. I should have waited for it to have nice green roots on it, nice and healthy. But unfortunately, the piece of wood that was this was on, it had actually rotten, and there was a lot of fungi. It wasn't doing too well. So to save the plant, I had to take it off. But I'd say 101% of our epiphytic orchids in South Africa, you have to grow them mounted, yeah, unless they're terrestrial. But just be aware, yeah, the epiphytic orchids, our indigenous ones, do have a license to collect and grow. Is there...
You may mention a fungi. We had a phalaenopsis on a piece of guava wood. They've got like a mushroom fungus that eventually killed the orchid. It's better not to have the fungus on it.
Mark, it's difficult. Mushroom fungi, they should... See, the fungi is not taking anything out, the nutrient out the actual orchid itself and the roots and that. But you never know. That's some people... I was having an interesting conversation with a mini crew about algae on plants, and I said, like in Zanin and where the big orchid, the orchard nurseries are, the citrus place, that algae that grows on the stems of their fruit trees, the oranges and that, they actually take it and spray it off because it does eventually smother the actual lemon or orange tree. The algae, no one really can say whether it's, but if it's, yeah, maybe it's just a guava, maybe they don't like the actual guava that it's on. Yeah. Is there any other questions? Would anyone? Sorry, yeah.
If you replant orchids, right?
Yes.
And you get the dead roots and the dead pieces, can you cut it off?
Yes, you can. That's why it's important to have a nice pair of sharp scissors. And if you've got a few orchids, you're going to cut this one now and go do another one. Sterilize your tool. They used to have the old Bunsen burner, used to sterilize it. What you do is just get 2 or 3 pair of scissors, use the one to do that, put this in the concentration 15-20% jick, spray it with a hydrogen peroxide 3% solution, put it down, use the next scissors. By the time you come back, that one's ready again to do it, because one of our most important things, we all do it, even the orchid growers, we transmit the tobacco mosaic virus and any fungi systemic from there. Cutting off a little piece of green root there, and I go and cut a little piece of green root there. There's sap on and then that can contaminate your different plants. Yeah. When they get like yellow, when they get to that stage, you see how, yeah, because they're still supplying. These are getting old. They see, yellow means that they're getting the right amount of sun. They're growing well. So these nobile, be a bit wary though. Those dendrobiums that you've got there, those are, how would I say, they mass produced overseas in Holland or Japan, whatever it is. So I call them like they've been chicken orchids. They grow in a controlled environment. Everything's fed, watered, sprayed, everything. So if you had to take that now as it is and put it on a log and put it out in the sun, the chance of that surviving are going to battle. So I'd rather get it used to your conditions before you actually do any repotting. But these here, if it's in the species nobile, the actual pseudobulb can actually go yellow. And some chap said, the old orchid grower, Marco Connie, said to me, I said, and also Keith Kirsten, I said, hey, Keith, this is going yellow. He said, Lance, no, that's when you know that your dendrobium, especially your sort of nobile species, is getting the right thing. So they can take full sun. No, they can take full sun. I've got a few growing in, but be wary of the plant, the species nobile. The exotic hybrids may be a bit more susceptible to look after them a bit more. But I've got Dendrobium nobile in a pot growing on no retaining block down a driveway, getting full sun. At the moment, it's just, yeah, especially the nobile type, yeah. But just be aware that it's gets used to the conditions before you want to move it out into full sun.
Now, how do you know the difference between the nobile and another dendrobium?
The nobile, there's a different type. Nobile is called a soft cane orchid. It's a soft cane. If you feel that, it's very, very, very soft. That's the soft cane orchid. Soft cane is your nobiles. And then you get the other ones in. This is sort of like a this is a dendrobium, but that's more of a sort of harder, cane. It's very, very, very similar. But I know you definitely get like this one here, Dendrobium moschatum. Now you can see that's basically a hard cane. That would be a hard cane. That's good, a little bit dehydrated, but that's a hard cane. So you get hard cane and your little soft canes, and they both do well mounted. See, that's what I came in to say now. No, I broke it off, but there's no new little nice little shoot, or there's no little nice little green roots coming out, which is going to give it a good start. Mounting that, and if you get to water it for 1 or 2 days, it's just going to dehydrate, and it's going to take a long time. It will establish maybe, but it's going to take a long time. But the Phalaenopsis may require, when you putting up, they may require a bit more of a, how can I say, a bit more of a protection. So if you're going to put them there, put this just around this, the sort of bottom. So the Phalaenopsis sort of sits, the leaves are all coming out here, but there's the leaves, but inside there would still be a bit of sphagnum moss or a bit of coir, just to get it established onto the actual tree itself. So that's what you're looking at. If that was your orchid there, you would just sort of tie to that sort of situation. And then you'd not have to be this big, depending on the type of the orchid, but have that there, and then your orchid would be in there with some bit of a mix in that, and some of the roots in there too, even some going out. And eventually, once they grow and they take over, then you could actually cut this off. And last point is mounting orchids. It's difficult to say how far on a mount. I've got an orchid. Now, you should know how it grows, how quickly it grows. An orchid normally, the orchid itself, the actual pseudobulb itself, the actual orchid itself is okay. But sometimes I get roots that are 10 to 30 times longer than the actual plant itself. So they all go down all over the place. So what you normally do is, what they normally say is, when you're going to mount it, get a mount at least twice the size of the actual bark. So if that was going to be mounted that way, you can see where the weight would be going, coming from the back. Don't mount it to there. Get a mount 2 or 3 times longer than what this would be, or as longer as you can. Just be aware that it must be hardwood so it won't drop. But they normally say allow at least half another length of your mount for that plant to grow. I find if you're not going to show your plants off, or if you're not going to do anything or sell them, is rather grow them into specimen plants. There's nothing worse when I see some people, they grow and they actually cut them off. What my Cattleya skinneri I've got mounted on a pole, it must have about 150, 200 of these. And in March, the whole thing just goes, it's just a massive white flowers. But what they do say, if you do want to split, they say these bulbs, or the pseudo bulb, or like on the Miltonia species, this is the Miltonia spectabilis, or the Laelia ancepsis. If you do want to split, don't split them to a single bulb or two. Rather keep a minimum of at least 4 to 5 bulbs. Yeah, so you give it a chance. Yeah. So don't see now there's split this there or split this there. At least 4 to 5 back bulbs of the back bulb meeting the pseudo bulb of those, and then the new growth. Yeah, so if you cut it down, it's just going to battle. But rather keep it as a specimen. There's nothing better than you seeing specimen. I've got one. What you do is, if it's a dendrobium, I've got 2 old wheelbarrows, and they were too big, so I put them in a wheelbarrow, and now I wheel them around, and then move in the sun. And you must see the Dendrobium nobile, the purple one. It's in a wheelbarrow. Then your flat wheelbarrow, it's just massive flowers, just a massive flowers. And you can do that for the Oncidiums too. You can do that for Oncidium spacillatum, that big yellow one that we see flowering in the garden. Put it in a wheelbarrow with old chunks of bark and charcoal, and you see how it comes. You can move it around with some flowering.
Specimen, do you just keep turning, right?
No, they actually do say, if you are going to grow specimen planters, if it grows one way against there, it normally grows towards the light, so you could get all the flowers and all the buds coming this way. So they say, sort of once a week, just give it a little bit of a turn around so it gets a chance to all the way around, and exactly the same except the lithophic ones. There's only the on mounting on rocks. I've seen them down in the wild. The indigenous one, there's the Polystachya pubescens and Rengaris musicola and the tridactyl. They're not hard to get. They're in natural areas. It's an indigenous epiphytic wood, but you can't collect them. They do grow. If you go like Port Edward Way, Mtumvuma Gorge, you see these growing on actual rock, the actual rock faces. But what they normally have got with them, they've got a bit of debris, a little bit of leaf matter. They're in a little bit of a thing in the rock where they can get their roots and get a bit of water. Lithophically, I don't know too many. They say there's the Lalias from Mexico. They're lithopic. They grow on iron ore rock, but I've never seen it. But in nature they do. And also some of your angraecums, in Madagascar. They grow on rock on the cliff dolomitic. Be aware though, with a rock, if you put it in the sun, it's going to heat up. So it's going to be very, very hot, So, but then try. Well, you know that if it grows on, then you know it's there forever, No, straight on. Exactly like if that's your tree, just say this is your tree. Big thing like that, and that's the small one. Same, just follow the same principles and the same procedures, And always if it's mounted towards the morning light, And just make sure that the tree that you're putting it on is going to be okay. It's not going to make sure it's deciduous. If it's deciduous, like a leopard tree, it's going to lose all its leaves, so it's going to have a lot more sun in winter and then shade in summer. Whereas like a trichelia, shade basically all year round, so it could be a bit of a problem. Just get to know what type of tree it is and just what type of orchid you have got. Palm tree, some people said they've never seen them grow, but I've seen 2 people in Hillcrest. A chap grew Cattleyas on, and they're growing very, very well. So it's the same thing, But they're just in the right place. Must have put it just in the right little spot where it gets the right conditions. Dappled shade and conditions, and not the boiling sun. But if it's not, that's what's nice. If you mount, you can move it around. So this there, it's getting a bit too sun, or you can pick it up and move it somewhere else. And that. Whereas a pot's a bit of a mission. You got to carry it around. You end up knocking it over all the time. Basically, what it is, it's feeding. They say weekly. Fertilizers, it's ideal if you've only got a few. You get the 2 types of fertilizers. You get the organic and the inorganic. Your organic would be your Seagro, your what's the other ones? Nitrosol, those ones. They're an organic fertilizer, which is very, very good. You also get the inorganic ones, which is much cheaper, like a multi-feed 316 teaspoon in 10 liters. You can feed. You can feed. What I normally do is, if they're growing in the tree and if you're going to feed a lot, what happens normally, a lot of the feed runs away. So it's normally nice if you've only got a few, is foliar feed. So wet the plant, let it be wet, come back, go and have a cup of tea, 2 cigarettes, whatever it is, come back and then foliar feed with a spray, if you've only got a few, with a foliar feed. So it just depends on the actual fertilizer. What they say is, in summer, spring, put a fertilizer that's high in nitrogen. So the nitrogen will be, so for example, the fertilizer says 511. NPK. 5 would be your nitrogen, 1 would be your potassium, which is for your fruit and flower, and 1 would be for phosphorus. No, I think the phosphorus in the middle, potassium at the end. So if you're going to grow them in summer, they're growing, use a high nitrogen content. And then over the period of time, you can adjust that. And if you, towards when it's coming into autumn, you can go into a sort of low nitrogen, a higher 315. 315 at the end, the potassium figures high, which will give it flowers, help it with flowering, It's just but I normally find if you haven't got like foliar feeders, if you only got a few, this is perfect, But organic, inorganic, nice to alternate. And hopefully you've got a few big hardy dars on there, which does the job for you in your tree, and then that's perfect. Okay, no, thank you. Thank you much for listening,
And a big shout out to Lance. Thank you for sharing your experience with all of us. And if you need to... Birds in the sky. And a big shout out to Lance for sharing his experience with us. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments box down below. We'll be sure to get back to them. And remember, if you'd like any further detail on this or any other orchid questions, Ed has posted up more than 100 different articles, all on orchid related topics. So be sure to go check that out. Thank you for watching. If you found any of this information helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.